everyone. I'm glad you're with us. Can you say hello to Jazz? Jazz, say hello.
Hi, everybody.
Jazz is a really good friend of mine. We met on the community that I'm always talking about. Um, and it's just been like besties ever since. Like, we've been really close. And I don't go a day without talking to her. So we decided that we would get together and share some fun ideas with you. But this was really sparked by her idea. And can you talk about that a little bit with the TikTok that you found and everything?
Yes, so I recently came across a TikTok. Um, I can't remember her name right now, but we will mention her at some point.
She'll be in
But
the description.
yeah, so she was talking about how we seem to associate darkness with evil, and we seem to want to push it aside, suppress it, all of these things, whether it's our internal darkness or stuff we see externally in the world. And she really talks about embracing it and how it's a good thing and how it's very vital to our human experience. So I've kind of been on my own journey with that. And so it's been very interesting to kind of delve into what my internal darkness even looks like, how it kind of plays into my everyday life, and how it can be beneficial and how it can be good for me, and how it can very much balance my life in general.
Right. And so my response to that was something that I love to talk about with people, and I haven't talked about on the podcast yet. But as someone whose like main deity is like considered a dark goddess or whatever, whatever you want to call that, I see the darkness very differently than what I think most people do. And I think Jazz kind of shares this opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I tend to look at the darkness as opportunity. It's like pulling the death card in the tarot. Or, you think about everything was born out of darkness. We had nothing and then the universe sparked to life. And even we were born out of darkness. We were in the dark in our mother's womb. Like darkness, black is associated with just a really like creation and new beginnings and fresh starts, also like protection. When you're doing protection magic, any kind of like thing like that, they always say use black candles, use black salt. Those things are there for a reason. It's because the darkness really is protective, and it's has a lot to do with just this like freshness and like a clean slate and a fresh start. I see darkness is fun, tantalizing. I love to dive in because you never know what you're going to get out, and that's kind of the fool card for me. Yeah, I'm often in that state, but why not? Why not? So yeah, and then that kind of led us to today's topic, which is paradoxes. We're going to talk about how Jazz and I both kind of see ourselves as a bit of a paradox. And we're going to talk about our personal experience. We're going to talk about life. We're going to talk about real stuff. And we'll talk about spirituality and really just where those things kind of come in and why it's important to embrace the darkness and your inner paradox. So, first of all, to talk about my own inner paradox, the main one that like kind of comes up at first when I think about it is the fact that I am very much a darkness kind of person. Like if you just kind of think of like a witchy kind of like darkness, I do a lot of that. But I mean, on the other hand, I don't do any harmful magic. I don't do any magic to hurt anybody else, or like any kind of magic that would be against somebody's free will. I don't do that either. So I have like a lot of morals and very like strict rules that I stick to, even though I'm like kind of thriving in the darkness and the chaos. And like we talked about, my goddess is a dark goddess, and yeah, that's led me to a lot of darkness type things. But at the same time, I am now kind of being shifted from that goddess to another goddess, and that goddess is Athena. So she is very much seen as like a light goddess. Like she has her stuff and her myths that we won't go into right now, but she's kind of a paradox too. But she is mostly seen as a light goddess, and I'm getting a lot of messages to like kind of go to the light, and just like an example of like what this looks like on paper, you know, what's this look like in real life? I always wear black, like black everything. I sometimes wear gray, maybe a color once a month. Like I am not a colored clothing kind of person. I do the goth thing, like that's just my vibe. I've done that since I was like 13 years old, and it's always like my whole life, like my whole important life, is just like that's who I am and who I present myself as. But I'm like the meme where you have the combat boot and then they take it off and they've got like fluffy pink socks underneath. That's definitely me. I literally do that and figuratively, where I'm like very much a fluffy, excitable, bouncy, young, uh, youthful, energetic person and very kind, like to a fault. So like I'm never mean or harsh to anybody. And that's like my biggest like first right in my face paradox when we look at it on a surface level. And I'm sure you can relate in some way, Jazz.
Absolutely. So, to go back to kind of like the goddesses, the one that comes to mind for me is the goddess Ishtar, who I did a little bit of research on her, and she goes back thousands of years to ancient Mesopotamia. And now, when you look at research or people like history kind of documents and stuff about her, she is this paradox of just like she's about love and sex, but at the same time, like death and like all of these little things that you're kind of like, how does this work? Is she a good goddess or a bad goddess? And when I was reading through it, I kind of got the message of she has been around for thousands of years and nobody can figure her out. Nobody to this day can figure her out. And she does not care. Like, that's okay. She is who she is. And she offers something to this world that she knows is important. And that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what people perceive, you to be. And so that was kind of a big message that I got. And I found her through an oracle deck that I have that is a goddess deck. And I would pull her card all the time. And I'm like, who is this person? So when I finally did that research and I started looking internally, I was like, I kind of get that where people kind of perceive me certain ways and it's really hard for people to understand me. And I would feel myself get like frustrated. I'm like, well, who am I? Because like they want to put me in boxes. Society wants to put me in boxes like this or
Mm-hmm.
that or everything. And I am just very much a person. I'm just like, I have my things to where like I am a very open minded person, but at the same time, when I believe in something, I do not move. Like I am so stubborn and I'm like, no, this is where I'm standing and I'm not moving. Like I will die on that hill type of like,
Right.
figure. And so that is kind of like my paradox. Like I just want to understand and know and like how does this person's mind work? How does this society like work? How does this like and I love the knowledge and understanding of stuff. And at the same time, like I have my things that I like. This is my routine and I'm not changing it. And so I think that's kind of where um, my internal paradox kind of starts for sure.
Yeah, and to build off of that, I very much am also like I call it like a serial learner, like a serial killer, but like I'm a serial learner where I will learn a subject, like I'll hear of a subject and I'll look it up and I'll be like, this is so cool, and I'll deep dive and I'll. That's how the podcast kind of came to be. We just like find shit and we learn about it. But I love to learn it, and I'm very open-minded like you are, and I just kind of take it all in. But I'm very kind of stuck in my ways in a way where it's like if it crosses like this much of a line of something I don't align with, like I trash the whole thing. Like I'll learn about it, but like I'm not gonna put it into my life. You know, I'll share it with people, but I'm not gonna like incorporate it into my personal. Um, and yeah, like I have to constantly be learning, but like I also love to teach, and I always get messages about being a teacher, being a healer, being a teacher, and like learning at the same time. It's just I'm a student and a teacher forever for the rest of my life, and I love that.
We all are. We all are. That is something that I learned is that it's important to have that balance to always be a student and always be a teacher and make sure you're not one for too long or you're one forever. Like that
Agree.
is kind of a paradox that everyone needs to embrace, is that you're not going to know everything. Like at one point in time, you're like, you're not going to know all and everything. You're always going to be a student. And then you also know so much just from life experience, you can always teach somebody, something different.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to like transition to like another paradox that I think for everybody can be an issue, is like labeling feelings as like good or bad. And I feel like that one's a huge one for me, because when I'm feeling either irritable or upset or angry, I'm like, no, that I can't feel that. I am a good person. I am a light worker. I cannot be angry. And that's such like complete BS. It's like, it's so important to feel those things, because like we said in the beginning, if you don't experience one, you don't know what the other one feels like. So
Mm-hmm.
that is so super, super important. But it's important to know how to express and filter those emotions, those negative emotions that are uncomfortable. It's not really good or bad, they just feel uncomfortable to like our human body. And it's not something that we desire to feel, I feel like,
Right.
ever. So, but when it comes up, that's just kind of like a signal of, okay, there's something I need to work on. There's something I need to kind of work through, maybe with a person or a situation, or maybe I'm not aligned with something anymore. And I need to kind of delve in and figure out, instead of suppressing that emotion or putting it to the side or trying to pretend that it's not there, why don't I invite it in, see what's really going on, try to express it in a way that is not harmful to me or anybody else, and work through and see what it's trying to tell me.
Yeah, it's like all the negative emotions are kind of just like little red flags that they tag like in your life. Just like this is a problem. Notice this. That's a really good way to look at it. I've heard that before, but not the way you put it. I love that. That's so wise. Um, yeah, just like knowing that they're there for a reason and it's not good or bad. I don't there are a lot of people, spiritual people, who don't like the terms good and bad at all. I don't know if our viewers are aware of that, if everybody knows about things like that, but like taking neutrality, the path of neutrality, and like seeing everything as just like being neutral. There is no good and bad. Everything is just neutral. It's what you make of it. And if you're taking anger and like, filtering it, like you said, and kind of say, oh, this is telling me I need to grow here. I need to learn here. I need to see something. And then it's not a bad emotion. Like your reactions, your actions can be hurtful, they can be harmful, but I wouldn't say good or bad. It's just good and bad are kind of, they're very extreme terms. And so, it's a line you walk when you start talking, labeling things good and bad, for sure.
Well, and definitely, like when you say like everything is neutral, it's so true. And at the same time, there's that same paradox of like there's contrast at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like you said a good or bad thing. Like if you do react or you take actions or whatever, it's just everything. Every action has a reaction. Every action has a consequence, and
Yeah.
it's going to steer you this way or steer you this way. It's maybe not good or bad, but it's just which road do you want to go down. And it's so comforting to know that when you have those uncomfortable feelings of like irritation or like fogginess or whatever, it can tell you like if that's kind of labeled the dark, like we said, dark is where a place where you can grow, where you can, manifest things, where you can
Yes.
choose your journey. And so it can be very, very comforting to be like, okay, well, when I feel these uncomfortable emotions, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity
Yes.
to, deal with something that I've put off for so long, or an opportunity to grow in a place I didn't see myself growing before. And so it can be so comforting, instead of being like, oh my God, I'm angry, I hate this, and I don't know what to do about it. And it's just kind of you're stuck in a little circle. And so when you change your perspective on these uncomfortable emotions, it can really break you out of that little hamster wheel that we find ourselves in over and over again.
For sure. For sure. Oh my gosh. That's so true. I think that's a good bit of wisdom right there.
I think what I will say another paradox for me is how I dress. And I want to say how I dress is because I am someone who, growing up, And even until very recently, it's something I've had to unlearn my whole life. But people pleasing and the wanting, um, sometimes there's times when I want attention, but there's other times when I like literally want to be invisible and I just want to go on my
There's
day.
another paradox.
Exactly. And so just how I interact with people, I usually kind of like keep to myself, like if I'm like out and about, but at the same time, I want to make a statement wherever I go. So that comes into like how I dress. So people don't really understand that like I wear crop tops all the time. All the time. And if it's winter, I'm wearing a crop top with a sweater on. You know what I mean? And so I have more shorts and crop tops than any type of like pants or sweaters or anything. And I do have, of course, I have, you know, those types of clothing, but, you know, when I'm feeling that way. But I just like to express myself that way. I like my nails. I like my hair being a certain way. I'm not a huge person on makeup. I do like to wear makeup, just not all the time, but it's mostly just like how I dress. I'm already 5'7", which is above average ish, and I
Oh,
like to wear heels anyway or wedges and stuff. I like to make a statement. At the same time, I'm okay if nobody comes and talks to me. So when I'm out requesting, I am. So it's very funny when people are like, "You're so shy," but then you dress like this. And so I don't. That's just a paradox I've accepted. I don't understand it really, to like at all. Sometimes I try to understand, but I just like I know what I like. I like to dress this way and make a statement, but I also am okay if I literally talk to nobody the whole time. I'm out
yeah.
and about and running errands. So that's a really funny one that people have been like not that don't understand about me. Where
They
the majority,
see it and they interpret it one way or the other, and it's really not exactly true. Um,
right?
that's so I resonate with that. I'm not shy at all, and like I literally like if I go outside of the house and someone comes up and talks to me, I am honored. Like I don't care who the stranger is. It could be the Birdman. It could be like crazy cuckoo lady. I don't care. I want to talk to people. I want to connect with people. Like that's my joy in life. Um, hence a podcast. But anyways, um, I don't get upset if nobody talks to me, but like I'm definitely much happier if someone does. So we differ there. But I'm also 5'7", I wanted to say, which is funny. We could just like look
So
right.
yeah,
And yeah, yeah. Uh, but the way you dress, does a lot of people will perceive you to be a certain kind of person. Like I
right.
get that a lot with like the goth and the punk and the whatever I'm wearing. It's like you get looks, but you also get, questions and like preconceived notions. And like all of that is kind of just nonsense. Like we need to stop, guys. We really need to stop. Like, get to know
Yeah,
somebody. Like, you
right.
could be talking to a person like me or Jazz, who is like totally a great person that would listen to the same podcast and like hang out. But, we just dress differently than we really are on the inside. And it's just kind of an expression thing. And like, God, is that important? Like, can we just like take a moment to appreciate like makeup and clothing and like things like that, your hair being a very like important way of expressing yourself? Like, if you're out there just like not doing anything, I guess it's a way of expressing yourself in and of itself, isn't it? But
It's kind of just like what it it's the importance kind of varies by the person, you know?
exactly,
So
exactly.
like me, my shoes are not important at all. I literally have one pair of sandals, I have a couple pairs of wedges and two tennis shoes. That's it. That's all I need. I know some people who like closets full of shoes and it's very important. I'm like, that is also valid. That is also
It is, it is. I used to be
very
that person with like the whole closet full of shoes, and
yeah.
I ended up moving in a real hurry and left like a ton of my belongings behind, and most of them were shoes. I left so many shoes behind. But nowadays, I have a pair of like Converse, like all black Converse. I have a pair of like ankle boots, like little like cute fashionable ankle boots, and then I have like a in between, like a slide on like
Yeah.
tennis shoe almost, but still fashionable. Um, and that's all I need. Like those three. Like you have formal, you have informal, you have like just like. And when I say formal, I mean I wear boots with my dresses. Get over it. Like I don't care. So it's you say it's not important. I find it very important to me, but I can limit it to those three. And that's another paradox. Like, if I want to
Yeah.
express myself with my shoes, why don't I have 1,000 shoes? Well, because that's expensive. But, also because I found the three I need, I guess. For now. It'll change. It always changes. But yeah.
I did want to say like a funny story real quick.
Oh,
You can
please
keep it
do.
or get out. But today I've been obsessed recently with like this bralette that I've been wearing, and I wear it as a crop. And I had like my shorts and some sandals on, and I went to go pick up breakfast, and I haven't been to this place before. And I got there, and it's in like a kind of like an outdoor area next to a huge mall that we have here in Houston. And I went in, and it was this very kind of like upscale, this upscale like brunch place. And so when I walked in, I literally eyes just went zoom like right on me because I was not in like the unofficial dress code
Right,
size,
right.
and it was very interesting. But I feel like no matter it's funny. I feel like no matter where I go, I get like eyes. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is really, if it is the way I dress or but I wanted to say that because I feel that we adjust ourselves a certain way to fit into wherever we're going. And my thing is that people have been commenting on how I dress since like I was in high school, college, whenever, or like wherever, when I started really expressing myself with my clothes. And I always I told myself back then, and I tell people now, I was like, people are going to say something and look at you no matter what, no matter how your hair is, no matter what you're wearing. There's going to be someone who that it looks off to, it looks different, it looks this or that, even if it's what's considered like normal or on the trend or whatever society is. And
Mm-hmm.
so I feel like when we're talking about our paradox and stuff, especially internally, some of what we want to embrace doesn't seem to be on trend or what's popular in social media or just society in general. And I feel like suppressing that is such like a betrayal to yourself. And so what I try to tell myself is like if I want to make a switch or if I want to do something or if I make a decision, I try to ask myself first if I'm feeling some resistance. I'm like, is this going to be me betraying myself if I do X, Y, or Z? And if it's not hurting me or anybody else and it's just me expressing myself, I'm going to fucking do it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and
Yes.
it's not my problem. And so I have to create that bubble of like whatever bounces my way, if it's looks or comments or energy, it's not about me, it's about them. Because the world becomes a better place when you are your happiest self and you express yourself. Because I'm gonna get on, hold on, I'm gonna be on my soapbox for 1 second. But it's just like if someone asked me the other day, when I was at work, I was serving, I have an asymmetrical face, which is obvious to some, not so obvious to others. But some people bring it up to me and it's fine. I've gotten to the point where it's fine. And this lady came up to me and she, asked me about it. And so she's like, you are just glowing. You're so beautiful. And like
Oh.
all this stuff. It was so sweet. And she was like, my husband has a similar, like asymmetric, face or, whatever. It doesn't look standard. And he like has been having a rough time with it and all of this stuff. And she was asking me how basically she's like, you're beautiful regardless, but how have you come to be like so
I love
like
that.
great and all this stuff? And I told her, I was like, honestly, I learned the hard way. But what I've noticed is that people are more attracted to your energy than your looks at the end of the day. Like if you are yourself and you're beaming authentically and you are just your natural self and you are loving people and you're just, yourself, people like literally flock to you with most of the time that same energy. And if they don't flock to you with that same energy, you kind of know who you are. So you just kind of reject that and reflect that back at them. But
Yes.
it's so amazing to just see like the more I am myself and I embrace the things that don't seem to be on trend or don't seem to be, what's popular and stuff. I embrace that myself anyway, and I create a new lane, and people are like, "Oh, I like that. What's that about her?" Like all these things and stuff. And so it's kind of like when you embrace that internal paradox and embrace those things that you might not, that you have some resistance with, it can kind of create this whole new life and this new path and this new world for you that is probably what you've been wanting to see the outside world to change anyway. Like, if that makes sense.
It
Like you
does.
want you want the outside world to change, but you have to start with yourself first and feel and figure out what that resistance is.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Everybody just like let that sink in for a minute. That was so good. Um,
I don't know if it
I
makes sense. I'm trying to like I
makes
was kind
sense
of
to
just
me.
go on the flow, but we'll pull it pick it
Um,
up for you.
I would say, in to like build off of that, to like even further your point, um, looking at it psychology wise, like, people are afraid of the things that they don't know or that they don't accept. Um, and, we talk about like the world is just a reflection of ourselves. And if you are beaming authentic, your whole self, and you don't you're not lying about yourself, you're not betraying yourself, like you're betraying yourself. That's such a good quote. She's given that to me before and I love it so much. I use it in my life. But if you are just like being your whole authentic self, the people, the haters will be turned away. And I assure you that you will get a lot less hate for things like being authentically yourself than you would if you're like trying to be put on and someone doesn't like it, because you're being like, that's the same vibrational channel, right? Like they're just being like what they want, they think society wants, and you're just being like what you think everybody else wants, or whatever reason you're betraying yourself, and that kind of meets and you'll get flack. But if you are truly yourself and, like you said, beaming, just glowing with like this, I am me and I don't give a fuck, like, a lot of people will be very intimidated, and the amount of people who don't like it, most of them will be turned right the fuck away. They will just say like, and then just leave. Like they will not bother you.
And to feed off of that, to go off of that, it's kind of like when you are putting yourself in a box, so you're putting yourself down and you're trying to fit in rather than be yourself. Those people that are your friends or that you hang out with, they are vibing on that as a reflection. They're probably fake. They're probably not really going to be there for you when you really need them. They're probably not telling you the truth. They're probably, not in the same like vibration that you aspire to be in, because
Yes.
you are putting yourself down in that space
Hmm.
internally. So that's what's going to be reflected back to you with the people you're around and stuff. So when you
Absolutely.
to work on that internal conflict, resistance, whatever it is, and embrace all of the things that you are, whether it's dark or light, quote unquote. Those people may still be around, but they can't hide like they used to. You know what I mean? Like their intentions, and like you see them way clearer now. You
Hmm.
see right bullshit because you know who you are. They might feel a resistance now, like you said. They will kind of be like, yeah, they'll be intimidated. They'll like all of those things, and that I think it just sets a clear path of like who is more aligned with you than who's not, kind of thing.
Yes, yes. And then like to just kind of make side tangents like we do. If you are having trouble finding friends that you really like, you want, like you have a certain ideal of what your friendships you want them to be, and that's just, you're just like down here like not getting them, make yourself into that person you want to be. Like make yourself that friend, because the friend you attract is going to be the friend that also wants those things. If you're being the kind of friend you're seeking, it's going to pull, like I said, it's just going to pull in that person or those people that are also seeking that kind of friend, because and you'll match, like you'll really click, and your vibrations, your energy will be just right for each other. And I keep doing this, whatever. um but I just think like that's a good little tidbit of advice. Like if you're struggling with like having authentic friendships, or like, you gotta look at yourself. Look at yourself. Like, are you being the person you want to attract? Like, because that's what you need to do. And it's hard to like lose all your old friends. Trust me, been there. But if it's for your best, like, or for your advancement in life, your journey, whatever it is that you're destined to do, fuck it. Like, better late than never, but sooner, as soon as possible. You just like fucking get rid of them. Get rid of them. Cut ties. Move on. Leave everyone in your life. Just kidding. Don't do that. But I know that's what I sound like. But really, it's
Don't
like
you
you,
good time?
you don't have to. You don't have to like make it a bad blood sort of situation. You can just kind of let those friends fade off and find your new friends. And that's my rant for this part of the podcast.
Yeah.
So another thing that comes with paradoxes is we often label things. And I know I'm not going to get up on a soapbox about labels and like whether you should label yourself or not. This is more about labeling others, because you can use labels however you want. If that helps you, if that's harmful to you, just find what works. Like, that's your own thing. But when you see other people, you everybody's so, we're not one-dimensional beings. We are very nuanced. We are very, there's so much, not just good and bad, and you don't want to label anybody with such a polarizing box, tiny little box, labels of any kind. Jazz, I know you have feelings about labels. You want to share?
Yeah. I definitely I go back to this kind of belief that I have of, if we think about like the universe, like if you really just like think deep, it is so complicated, so much more complicated than A and B and C. Like it is totally just like, yes, we can kind of see things coming or stuff like that, but we can also like, it's so unpredictable. So
Mm-hmm.
if we are created in that, and like, as though as like a product of the universe, why are we any different? And we are so complicated, we are so complex. It's in a way like we would love that simple of just like our, little human brains in this 3D world to be like, yes, this is this, and this is
Right.
this, and this is that.
That's how our
And
brains work, but it's not how
right,
we work.
right. And so I understand that, because like you can go back to the fear, like the TikToker that we kind of mentioned in the beginning, she also says like the opposite of love is not hate, it's fear. Because fear is when we start doing hateful things, you know?
Right.
So, and that fear comes from not understanding. And if you just
Yes.
understand something a little bit more, it becomes less fearful, there's less hatred, there's more love. And so it
Yes.
all comes just back down to, yeah, the labels and stuff. Like it's so much more complex than that. And you can label things, but when it starts to kind of contradict itself or whatever, you can change it. There's no rule written in stone that says
Right.
that this is the label and it has to stay that way. Like things can
Yeah.
change, evolve, and all of that stuff. So that's kind of what I wanted to kind of put on labels, because I had to tell myself that, because I kind of like to label certain things, and I'm like, okay, I'm this, I'm like that, whatever.
Hmm.
It'll change, and I'm like, wait, no, I have to put myself back in this box. And I'm like, no, I am a human that's evolving and I'm complex, so we can change the label. Like it's okay. We do that. So
Absolutely. Bravo. Love that. Um, yeah, I've found myself, I'm a Virgo sun. I love organization, and that in my life does start to trickle into how I organize people. And with some of my diagnoses, there are issues with like black and white thinking, and I don't know if I've talked about that on the podcast. So black and white thinking is essentially like you see someone as all good or all bad, or like you see something as completely right and good for things, virtuous, and something else is like horribly immoral. And it's very like polarizing. There's no gray, there's no middle ground. And that, has been a challenge, but I've worked really hard to understand that everything is nuanced. Everything is nuanced. Like even math, if we're gonna be honest, even math, like people will like debate that shit. So like, how can we, if something's as simple as numbers has like complex layers, how can we think of us like a product of all this math and science that the universe has done to like get us to being humans? Like, how can we just put one single label on, And so I find labels helpful for me. I like to label myself in certain ways, but I never let it hold me back. It's like I am Alice and I think of myself as, or I have this label of, I am diagnosed with XYZ, whatever it is. But you've got to be very willing to let go of labels. Don't get attached. And that's what I've learned as someone who does very much function with a brain that loves to label everything. You've got to just be willing to say goodbye to labels and even be open and excited for it. Why not? Why not? Evolving and growing is exciting. Change isn't always bad. Sometimes it's exciting. So it can be both. But, change isn't bad or good. Another polarizing, nuanced topic. But
I wanted to feed off of that a little bit and say it can get pretty intense when you're like, oh, if I can't label things in the world, like what organization is there? Like, there's no organization anywhere. Because I am also someone who likes lists and schedules and all of those things, and everything has its place. And at the same time, I think the best way to start is with yourself and to just do like an internal inventory and be like, where are my paradoxes? And maybe like you will see some and you're like, I didn't even notice that. And I don't even like try to blame myself for it or try to fix it or whatever. It's just something I've accepted about myself.
mm-hmm.
And so when you see that and you're like, oh, I am this and this, both are true. And I can accept that about myself. It comes a little easier to see the world that way and other people that way. And I'm going to bring a point that Alice had mentioned even before, when we were originally talking about this topic, but having compassion for yourself. Having compassion that you are this and this, that you are this and this, and you are complex and you are layered and you are all of these things. And when you start to have that with yourself, you can start to see the paradoxes in other people and in the outer world, and you can easier have compassion for other people.
Yes.
It really comes naturally when you start with yourself, when you fill your cup up, when put I love the airplane example. Like you put your mask on first before you
Uh-huh.
put your mask on other people. And, you got to make sure you're good first, that you understand you and you have compassion for yourself. And it's a ripple effect after that when it comes
It
to
is.
how you experience life and other people.
Yeah, and once you can really, sit down and start that work, I think that might sound really difficult to some people, but I want to assure you that it comes very naturally. Like you'll start with okay, I'm gonna sit down and journal, or I'm gonna sit down and record my voice and I'm just gonna talk and rant, or whatever your way of processing is. And just like start with like what are my paradoxes and follow that path, and then afterwards like maybe even make a list, maybe even write them out like next to each other. And you can just kind of sit there afterwards and look at it and be like, I have compassion for me. I have compassion. I am all of these things. I am this and this. And really making it like a point and then trying your hardest to incorporate that into your life as often as possible, as much as you can, honoring yourself, not lying, not changing yourself, not hiding yourself, having compassion, and knowing that there are people out there who will accept you. You have to find them first, but it will
Yeah.
happen, and it'll happen a lot easier and faster once you're, authentic and your true self. And so I think in practice, it's not as hard as it sounds. It really will just be like an avalanche, starting small and then just building until you are just like this free feeling. Like it's such a weight off your chest once you just decide to be yourself. It's a game changer. It's life changing.
I will say it's when you do start doing that internal inventory and you start kind of looking at yourself a little bit more, you may see certain paradoxes that are out of balance or that
Mm.
is a lot over here and a lot over here, even though they're both true for you and you need them in balance. Maybe you're leaning way over here because you think this is right or this is how it's supposed to be, and this other part gets neglected. And then there's that resistance. So when you start to kind of look at yourself in that way, and you're like, ooh, I could bring this back into balance. I know that was definitely
Yeah.
that I had to do. Like when I even realized, like, oh, I have these things that seem to be contradicting each other. And so I chose one and neglected the other one. And that just caused more confusion and resistance within myself. And
Right.
yeah, so I would say it's definitely the fact of me wanting to people please, like I said again, or wanting to
Mm-hmm.
say, oh, this is how society views this, so this is not good for me. This is how, all of that stuff. And I realized there were certain contradicting type things that, or traits that I have. And I had to look within myself and be like, oh, okay, I see that I totally completely chose this one and neglected this part. And that's
Right.
not, it works. So it was a weight lifted and I was like, oh my God, I can do both. I didn't know I could do that. I could do both.
I mean, maybe that's kind of speaks to like the next steps. Like once you've worked on what are my paradoxes, it might not show up for you in that first stage, but maybe think of the places where you're very extreme, like extremely one way and not the other. And, even though that other side may not seem relatable to you, like just think about it. Like maybe it is, maybe it would be, maybe it would be better if it was a little bit more you. You can see places that are out of balance and need a little balancing, and or you can just kind of take inventory, notice it, and just be like, okay, like I'm very, this side, not this side. I'm a little out of balance or a lot out of balance. And then you can watch your life. Once you have that knowledge, you're going to start seeing places where that pops up. And maybe that would be a good exercise to do after
Yeah.
you're working on like the things you can accept about yourself, like your two different options or sides, and then look at like where you're extreme and like maybe you can bring some balance in from that other side that you've neglected. I think that's incredible. It came through for you. I've honestly never done that. I kind of need to. I think I need to sit down and like take some personal inventory and like where am I extreme on one end of the spectrum and how can I balance that?
Yeah, for sure.
So a lot of what we're talking about, embracing your paradoxes and like looking at those things, checking both sides, all of that, it is something that you would see traditionally in shadow work. And I love that it's called shadow work because it fits with our little darkness and lightness theme so well. And I want to remind everybody, if you didn't know or if you just like forgot, shadow work isn't about like fixing yourself. It's not about changing anything about yourself. It's about accepting yourself and loving yourself, having radical self acceptance, which is a hard practice but has been so pivotal in my life. And just radically accepting everything about yourself, whether it's something that you're comfortable at the time, like if you're comfortable with it at the time or not. But shadow work is about taking that shadow side, that part that we've neglected, the part we push away, and integrating it. Like integrate that into who you are as a whole. It's nothing about destroying the shadow or getting rid of your shadow parts. It's all about integration, from a therapy and a spiritual perspective. You want to embrace all of yourself. If you ask anybody who knows a bit about shadow work, that's what they're gonna say. And I just want to bring up like a couple like examples of goddesses that are very paradoxical. Is that a word? I think it's a word.
Hard
um,
now.
uh, so I think of, right off the bat, I think of Freya. And we did an episode on Freya not that long ago. There's a beautiful quote at the end of the podcast about goddesses that are, light and dark, and that being like a very big source of power. And I think we can kind of take a lesson from that. Like the goddesses and gods that stick around that really hit home with people are the ones who are very much, two-sided and have multiple kind of ideas and themes, and can be a paradox. But the one that I go to is Freya. She is like you talked about with Ishtar, fertility, goddess of love, goddess of beauty, goddess of like sensuality, sexuality, all those things. And then she's also the goddess of war and goddess of death, and like has her own, like there's Valhalla, but she has her own version of Valhalla. I can't remember the name of it. Don't kill me for it. Um, but she takes half the dead. She picks her first half. She gets to pick before Odin and takes half the dead to her place, and like lives with the dead, has a hall for uh, passed away soldiers, and like she's thought to aid in people who are passing over to the other side. Like she's very much about darkness and death and war and bloodshed, but like at the same time beauty and love and like young innocence and like so many things. It's a beautiful balance, and I think like almost all the goddesses I work with are kind of like that. And I didn't realize it until Jazz was pointing out all these paradoxes that we both have, and it was very eye-opening, very eye-opening. So just like as an example, I'll just put that one out because that's the one I know pretty well, better than the others. So yeah, like it's not just an us thing. Like even the divine, some of the most powerful of the divine, some of the most influential and remembered, are the ones who are very paradoxical.
So I think one of the most important things for me about my internal paradox is this quote that like I wrote it in my journal months ago before I even started. I've only really started embracing my internal paradox maybe like 2 weeks ago max.
See, it works
Like really
fast.
embracing it. Yes, yes. So, but months ago, I wrote this in my journal and I put, I feel most unstoppable when I have one hand on my pain and one hand on my power. And I literally wrote it and I was like, who said that? Like, who wrote it? But it's so true for me because even when I'm doing work like this, like, collaborating and getting a message out that really resonates with me, I can look back at where I put myself in boxes. I made myself fit in. I was, depressed or anxious or, doing these things that I don't know, it's just grounding for me. It's grounding that like I can stand here and not be emotionally attached to those situations anymore, but I can see them objectively and they're right here and I can see them and I can remember what it feels like, but not be traumatized again.
Yes.
But it's so important for me to remember those times, those spaces I was in where I just felt completely alone, hopeless, like all of these very uncomfortable feelings I did not know what to do with at the time. And saying, oh my God, like that was point A, I'm here at point B. And it was my power that got me here. So that was like the pain and the power. And like just imagining, even when I'm here and I'm feeling certain uncomfortable things, it is nowhere as intense as what it was before. Because the difference is now I have awareness and clarity and I know what works. So even if I find myself in those spaces again, I know how to navigate it. And that is the power that I've learned from being in that darkness. And now I'm at the point where I don't even know where I'm going to go from here. If I gave it to you, I was like, universe, do your thing. Because, like,
Yep. Yep.
and it's just going to keep doing what I'm doing, let my intuition navigate me, and just ask myself, am I betraying myself if I do this or if I do this? And just take it day by day, decision by decision. And just knowing that comfort of if I have one hand here and one hand here, I can't fail. Like I will go to amazing places. I have that faith in myself and in the journey I've been on, and also with the universe and my relationship with the universe. So that is one little thing I wanted to throw in.
Yeah, and
Well,
I think that's so beautiful. That's such a good message. Such a good message. And honestly, I think I'd like to end on that. I think, we've talked about it. We've covered what we need to cover, And that kind of sums everything up. So thank you so much. Really, thank you so much for taking the time to meet up with me. You've been kind of busy, and I just, you're one of my besties. I had to have you, and this was such a great way to start.
This was so exciting. I'm glad we got to do this. I know we were both talking about topics. We were like, this is the one.
This is the one.
This
Yes.
is the one. Super excited.
Yes, and so also Jazz has her own podcast.
I do. It's in the baby stages. It's in the very
Right.
beginning. Right now, there's only one episode, but I love it, and I'm going to add more to it. It is called I Don't Subscribe to That. It is only on Spotify right now. Like I said, it's in the beginning. But if you would like to check that out and subscribe to it, that would be super, super great.
Right, and also Jazz has Instagram and TikTok. I'll link all of those below. I'm not going to make her send you to every single one out loud, but I'll link everything down in the description if you want to follow Jazz, if you want to learn more about her, if you want to be, kind of consuming that vibration of content. Definitely check her out. It's amazing. And we'll have you back sometime. It was so good.
Yay! Thank you so much.
You're welcome.